Okay, today we're going to formalize some of what we just said and make vectors a little bit more mathematically consistent. As a reminder, a vector is a mathematical object defined by a size, which we call its magnitude, and a direction. Many things in physics are vectors, such as displacement and velocity and acceleration, things we've already talked about. You need to know where something is. You also need to know what direction it's heading or what direction it's being accelerated. Things we haven't run into yet, but we will later, are things like forces or momentum or the strength of a magnetic field. On the other hand, a number that has only magnitude, but might still have units, but does not have a direction, is called a scalar. This might be things like your temperature, or your height, or your mass. These are things, or the number of eggs in a dozen. These are things that don't have a direction associated with them, a spatial direction. Generally, if you want to know if something's a vector, see if it makes sense to add the word eastward. So you can say that you are moving 25 meters per second eastward. That makes sense. But you can't say that you have a temperature of 25 degrees Celsius eastward. It just doesn't parse. So that's the easiest way. Scalar, we'll come back to, is chosen for a reason, actually. Vector, as an aside, comes from the Latin word for flow. Strictly speaking, it actually comes from the Latin word for carrier, which is also why you have, like in zombie movies, you talk about the vector that carries the disease from place to place. In this case, we're saying we're carrying a thing from point A to point B. When giving a vector name, there are two conventions that we use. We'll follow each of them. One, we can write it in boldface, so just something which is nice and thick, but nothing else special. Or we can write using a little arrow over the symbol to remind us that it's vector, this little vector title. So we have vector A in boldface, or vector A with a little vector sign. This second one is really the superior one, because this typesetting can be very different on how you're looking at it, how people have the computer set up, if you photocopy it, and so on. This is pretty unambiguous and doesn't depend on the set of choices for how you present your font. The difference, of course, is that most things can't typeset this very easily, so textbooks and stuff often used to use the bold because it was cheaper, to be honest. It's just easier to typeset. But we'll use the arrow with the because it's a little clearer. In drawing a vector on a diagram, we represent the vector with an arrow. That's why we use the arrow as its little symbol. And the arrow should point in the direction the vector points, sort of course. And the length of the arrow should be proportional to the magnitude of the vector. So a vector that has twice as big magnitude would be twice as long. We say that because only displacement vectors could actually be drawn in physical space with a scale. Things like velocity vectors, you can't really draw them because they don't have a length. They have a length per unit time. So we scale them so that they're at least appropriately sized so we can compare them. All right, so we have here, Alice takes the following trip. First, she travels due north for 4 kilometers, then she travels due east for 6, and finally she travels due south for 3. So 4, 6, 3. Draw arrows representing the trips, and a black arrow that represents from her starting point to the end point in one step. So we might say, let's see, it was blue first. 4 kilometers, well, she starts at 2, so she should end at 6. That's the first bit. And then east for 6, so she starts at 2, she should end at 8. 4, 6, 8 here. And then south for 3. So 1, 2, 3. These are our 3. And if we wanted to represent in one step, if someone was pointing to where she would end up, then they would point from her starting point over to here. And again, this is our tip-to-tail notation that we talked about before, that if 3 vectors are aligned, or multiple vectors, any number, are aligned so that one naturally just leads into the other, right? Just this one leads, and you're like, oh, and here's the next one, and here's the next one, then we define their sum as just connecting them up that way. Drawn with a little bit less shakiness, this is where we end up. In some intuitive sense, the black vector is the same displacement as the other ones out together. So we define vector equality by saying 2 vectors are equal if they point in the same direction with the same size. And we define vector summation if when we align the vectors tip to tail, we get the other vector, then we say that it is the sum. Right? Again, I want to stress, it's how we define vector addition. It's a choice we make. It's a logical choice, but it's still a choice we make. We do it this way because then we can still use our sense of how pluses and equals matter. In other words, we promote algebra to a vector sense and don't have to learn a new kind of algebra. For vectors that are tip to tail, like the ones we drew, the addition is very easy. Find the vector with an open tail, connect it with an arrow to the vector with an open arrowhead. As an aside, there's an old-timey word called the resultant. We define the resultant of two vectors as simply the sum. It's just an old-fashioned word from back when people were talking about this. It comes from the idea that it's what results from adding them. It's falling out of favor, and that's probably good. It's not a particularly useful word. So take a second and add these two vectors. You might want to sketch them or do at least on a paper something approximately. And to add vectors, let's add them in green. Again, find the open endpoint, go to the open arrowhead. So like this, and the arrow ends up here. Because remember that all times we're trying to say a movement that is the same as these two together, that we start in the same place and we end in the same place. Don't cover the same distance, but we end in the same place. Again, drawn maybe a little bit more accurately. Now let's add these vectors. A little bit more complicated because there's 3 of them. But the basic process doesn't change. We start at the open endpoint and we end at the open arrowhead. And so we should get something that goes like this. And notice again, it's where we end up if we were to follow the chain. Here, brings us here, brings us here. Most of the motion's lost. And in one step, it would just be that. They start and end at the same place. Start and end at the same place. What if the vectors aren't tip to tail? Well, then our method seems to break down. But remember, a vector is defined by its magnitude and its direction, but not its location. So we can slide a vector parallel to itself without changing it, as long as we don't change its direction and its magnitude. So in the end, we can just move our vectors until they are tip to tail. If we're going to try and add this vector to this vector, we just pick one of them up and slide it parallel to itself until such time as it is tip to tail, and then we draw our vector, just as we had before. So we slide it up, and then we connect. Oops, something like that. And that would be the sum. Right, we haven't changed anything by sliding the vector because it still points in the same direction. Right? These two vectors, this one and this one, point in the same direction. I know that because I moved it parallel to itself, and is the same length because I drew it that way. This is sometimes called the parallelogram rule, because we're making two sides of a parallelogram and then saying, hey, the vector is the diagonal. That's kind of an old-fashioned thing because nobody ever really draws the other sides of the parallelogram. But it is, again, much like resultant, it's an older name for this, and it's a way of adding them graphically if you need to. We'll come up with a different way to add them algebraically, but that's a little in the future. All right, so this says, shown at left below are the vectors k through n, with the lengths in arbitrary units, meaning they're whatever they are. And on the grid, we're going to construct a graphical representation of the sum, k plus l plus m plus n, and then indicate the direction of j, but we won't have to, we'll have seen it, we don't have to use the rosette. So take a second to do that. All right, and then we just walk through. So let's take k, which goes, let's take k towards in the middle. So k plus l, which is down 3 and over 2. Oops, that's not so good. Let's try that. And then m, which is like that. And then finally n, which goes here. So that our actual vector, which remember always starts in the same place and ends in the same place. Starts here, ends here. So we get that this is j. And I suppose we could label the others. But notice that j and m are the same. So it actually turns out we could say that j equals m. And that's actually kind of interesting on its own. Right? Because that means something kind of fascinating about the other guys. If j equals m, let's go up here and write it. J j, which is k plus l plus m plus n, which I could write as m plus k plus l plus n. But if j equals m, then I have that m equals m plus the sum of k plus l plus n, which means that k plus l plus n must equal 0. Let's see what that would mean. So I'm going to erase this so we have some room to talk. And I'm just going to do those. So I'm going to say, give me this and say k is this way. And then L says this. And then N says this. And notice that we're back to where we started. We went around this triangle and where we started. So this is equal to a 0 vector. What is a 0 vector? One that doesn't go anywhere. Points any direction you like, but has 0 magnitude. And we'll use that a lot too, that when any number of vectors form a closed polygon, then you know that they sum to 0. And if they sum to 0, you know that they form a closed polygon. Very special case, not this particular triangle, which is interesting but not very important, but the idea that we can have things that sum round to a vector of 0. All right, so let's add these vectors. Obviously, this is not the easiest in the world to do, but maybe we do something like that. Looks about right. And then should be parallel to that, about the same length. So I don't know. I don't really believe my sketch very well. I should get out a measuring tool, but something like this. We see that I was a little bit off when I actually did it by moving around the vectors in Google Drive. In Google Doc, it was a little bit cleaner. There's a tiny bend there. And that's one of the perils of doing the graphical method, is that you have to be very careful drawing your lengths and your angles, or else as you do multiple ones, they add up and they get further and further off. All right, imagine the vectors a minus a. Well, anything minus itself should be 0, right? That's our general basis of math. But a minus a is the same as a plus negative a. So these two vectors should end up where they started. And we can see here that's what's going on, that I take a, and if I want to get back to where I started, right, so a goes from here to here. If I want a plus minus a to end up back here, then I have to go back the same direction, or opposite direction, same length. And so we can see that preceding a vector with a minus sign is the same as flipping its direction 180 degrees, right, in whatever plane you pick. This allows us to then talk about subtraction by adding a negative, that we can turn any subtraction into a sum of a negative. Just another example of that, where we have s and r. If I want to have s minus r, I would flip r. So we'd have minus r like that. Now they're in tip to tail, so I know that this is s minus r. That often happens if we draw the vectors to a common origin, then it becomes very easy to draw their difference, because they'll automatically end up in tip to tail. All right, consider adding a vector to itself, like b is a plus a. We would hope algebraically that a plus a would just be 2a. We'd like our equal sign and plus sign to mean that. And graphically, we can see that if I take a and I add to itself, I get a vector that is the same direction, but twice as long. What we've done is we've scaled the vector by the number in front of it. And if you remember, we called the numbers that weren't vectors, we called them scalars. We called them scalars because they rescale the vector. All right? In general, multiplying a vector by a scalar resizes the vector by that factor. It works if you use numbers bigger than 1, in which case the vector gets larger. And it works if you have numbers less than 1, in which case the vector gets smaller. And it works if you have numbers that are negative, which will both scale the vector and flip its direction. So everything behaves sort of the way we'd expect it to behave algebraically, and graphically is pretty easy to interpret. By the way, the scalar could have its own units, so it's possible that B and A would have different units. If I, for instance, had one of the things that we'll run into from time to time is that the displacement vector is the velocity vector times delta t. So it takes the meters per second multiplied by second, turns it back into meters. We'll talk about that later. It's not important to remember right now. But the idea being the scalar can carry its own units and therefore can change the units of the combination.